So now I'm going to talk about a few important topics in comparative literature just to give you an idea about what comparative literary scholars are interested in and what kinds of issues as well as texts that you would typically read in a comparative literature syllabus. So generally, comparative literature is very concerned with issues such as global connections between cultures and also circulations of texts. So how one text reaches another country and reaches new readers and how it is reinterpreted in a new context. So at the same time, cross-cultural encounters as well as transcultural phenomena are quite important, as well as aesthetic experience which you gain from reading literature and from experiencing artworks and different cultures. As for what specific texts and materials are often discussed in comparative literature, this can in fact vary a lot depending on the tutor who is teaching you and who is designing a course. I mentioned that comparative literature rethinks the literary canon and diversifies it. And this means that lists of works that are considered important for comparative literature could look rather different depending on who is producing them. And in fact, this can be seen as an advantage rather than disadvantage because you will learn about different dimensions of literature from different tutors. So if I were to produce a list of important texts for comparative literature, I would definitely include modern European and American fiction as well as poetry, but also some Chinese and Japanese texts that have been very influential in East Asia and been widely translated. For instance, Chinese landscape poetry, the Pillow Book, or the Japanese writer Yukio Mishima's Confessions of a Mask, which was one of the first psychologically introspective novels of 20th century Japan. Of course, I will also include some contemporary writers who are widely read, for instance, Haruki Murakami or Orhan Pamuk and many others. To give some examples from the first year comparative literature course at UCL here, we have topics relating to gender and literary genre. For instance, how the novel as a global genre has become the most read in terms of attracting numbers of readers, as well as the most widely circulated popular literary form on the global literary market. We also talk about cosmopolitanism and multiculturalism and read Salman Rushdie's Fury and Zadie Smith's Embassy of Cambodia to discuss these issues. We discuss also what it means to study literature at a time when we are living in multi-ethnic and multilingual societies. We look at how literature responds to issues of planetary significance, meaning issues that are globally important and usually also very urgent. For instance, climate change, which features very much in a lot of contemporary writing, both poetry and fiction. So we do look at how some contemporary writers have imagined apocalyptic futures if nothing is done about the environmental crisis, or how this kind of environmentally engaged literature tries to convey messages about the deteriorating planet and therefore attracts the attention of readers. And precisely because such planetary issues, such as climate change, is something that affects every single country and people in the world now, it is also very suitable for comparative analysis. Because what we can do is say, let's look at what American writers have been saying about environmental risks and say oceanic pollution, and look at how their writings compare to what East Asian writers are talking about in terms of air pollution, or how the land is exploited by rather polluting industry. And therefore, precisely because these problems are common problems we are dealing with on a very large scale, there are also numerous connections and contrasts that can be found between different literary depictions of these problems. Of course, finally, the question of translation is also very important in comparative literature, and usually translation is a topic per se for investigation. For instance, translation is firstly really useful for us to access foreign texts. And for example, if there were no translations of Arabic language literature, and I cannot read Arabic, therefore I wouldn't be able to know what Arabic language writers are discussing or thinking of at all. So at the same time, translation is never simply a reproduction of the original text. It recreates the text in new ways and always adds new dimensions to it, depending on the translator's decisions, but also depending on who are reading these translations and in what kind of context. So this is to say that translation also features as a key topic in comparative literature, because it is both the very texts that we are reading, as well as a key process that is worth exploration in the discipline.